We are fast approaching the first deadline for the US and Iran to outline an international agreement over nuclear weapons and their development. And one aspect that has not been covered in mainstream media is the growing influence of Iran on some Latin American countries, something that might shed light on how Iran might operate towards the US in the future, creating an anti-American sentiment in the south of the continent. For example, it was recently uncovered that from 2007 to at least 2010, there was a flight from Caracas, Venezuela to Tehran that made a stop in Damascus, Syria. Allegedly, Hugo Chavez and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad call it the Aeroterror. Only government officials with a special clearance were permitted to fly on it, and there were often very few passengers. Instead, according to the US government testimony and a report by Brazilian paper Veja reporter Leonardo Coutinho, the plane was laden with drugs, weapons, and cash. Roger F. Noriega, the Assistant Secretary of State for the Western Hemisphere, said in Senate testimony, and I quote, "The Venezuelan state-owned airline Conviasa operates regular service from Caracas to Damascus and Tehran, providing Iran, Hezbollah, and associated narco-traffickers a surreptitious means to move personnel, weapons, contraband, and other material." So this is very interesting, Nick. It amplifies the whole situation with the Iran talks, and we're seeing that this situation that have been discovered, combined with the death of the Argentine prosecutor Alberto Nisman just recently in January, is starting to show that Iran had a presence in the continent, and we've seen he was close to Lula da Silva, he was close to Evo Morales, Nisman was bringing up how the Argentinian government might be involved in a cover-up of Iran doing a terrorist attack on a Israeli center in Buenos Aires in '94. So they are very worried that the involvement of Iran in Latin America, it's a long-term strategy.
Right, and I'm never quick to sit here and say, with something like this, for example, this is some secret way for them to covertly incite hate in South America and be against America and do this and do that and do this. But when you look at the facts and you say, okay, it ran for 3 years without being intercepted or interrupted, only government officials were allowed mostly, come on, it's like you cannot deny that. It's nothing new. I mean,
and
we
Chavez
know
was
that
very close to the former president of Iran.
Yeah. A friend of my enemy is my friend, right?
Yeah.
I mean, an enemy to my enemy is my friend. Yeah, we know. Again, not surprising, but it's just sad that these leaders who are presidents of huge countries with huge populations, will do these kinds of things with blatant disregard of people's health, blatantly funding drug trafficking and weapons to terrorists at the same time. It's sad, but not surprising, given both of those presidents' reputation.
And the thing is that the strategy that is being used is they establish these relationships with Latin American countries that are leaning to the left, that are trying to establish, at some degree, socialist governments. And Iran comes in and they start establishing legitimate embassies where they can operate in the country. Mm-hmm. Sometimes to carry out attacks like the one in Argentina. In some other instances, like in Brazil, it's more about having an operation center. Nisman, he was about to reveal that the terrorist attack in '94 in Buenos Aires actually was carried by Hezbollah members that lived in Brazil.
Right.
So he was trying to bring to the table all these Iranian connections in the continent that made a bigger picture, but he wasn't allowed to give it. And right before he died, he was invited to the US, to Congress, to a hearing. And in a response to that, Toby Dershowitz from the Foundation for Defense Democracies gave this quote. "The Department of Justice and other US government agencies should be concerned about who killed a prosecutor with whom it had an important relationship and whether it was aimed at silencing him and his work implicating Iran. Nisman's suspicious death is a matter I hope the next Attorney General and others will pursue impartially, even if it comes at an inconvenient time as the P5+1 negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran." And I think he hits it right on the head.
Right, and
it's possible that the U.S. might turn a blind eye to this situation.
Okay, yeah.
in order to achieve this agreement, this goal of having a nuclear agreement with Iran as a victory for the Obama administration.
Right, and then it's like we're putting personal victories ahead of national
domestic,
security.
yeah, domestic interest. Yeah.
But again, all of this underlines a lot of crazy shit, to put it nicely. Okay, we don't know how much behind the scenes stuff is going on. Iran is pulling strings left and right from behind the scenes. We see what they're doing in the Middle East alone, in Yemen, and in other countries, giving money to terrorist groups and financing certain things that they want to get done, which will somehow benefit them in the long run, just so that they can remain, you know, their hegemony in that region. But you know, that's the way it goes, and we don't think on a day-to-day basis how much shady stuff goes on behind the scenes. But governments are being funded by drugs and guns and all these crazy things. We just don't know it, we don't see it, until something, of course, like this comes to light.
And even when that comes to light, there will be governments that try to silence it, like we saw in Argentina.
Yeah.
That the whole Kirchner administration is under fire right now because their possible involvement on silencing this prosecutor. But we want to know what you think. Do you think that Iran is trying to create a hub in South America to have a position against the US? Or these are just isolated incidents and they shouldn't affect the possible agreement in between the US and Iran and the rest of the international community for a curve on their nuclear actions? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the Lib TV.